Welcome to Haunted Talks, the official podcast of The Haunted Walk, offering ghost tours and paranormal adventures in Kingston, Ottawa, and Toronto, Ontario. My name is Jim Dean. I am the creative director, and I really appreciate you joining us for today's show. Now, since our last episode, it's been a couple of very busy weeks for me, and that's because I've had the opportunity to meet and work with our teams in Kingston, Ottawa, and Toronto, with close to 100 different tour guides across our three cities. And let me just say what a privilege and pleasure it is to work with such a diverse, dedicated, and talented group of people. So to all the tour guides listening out there, thank you so much for the hard work you do for us every single night. We have finally made it to summer. While technically I know summer does begin in June, in Canada at least, it feels like the summer really begins on July 1st with the Canada Day celebrations. So to all of our Canadian listeners, a very happy belated Canada Day, and to all our listeners in the US, a very happy 4th of July. Last summer, we started a new series of programs where we interview ghost tour operators from around the world and hear a little bit about how they do things and, of course, some of their favorite ghost stories. Due to popular demand, we are going to be bringing that back this summer, and this marks our first road trip episode. We are headed to the West Coast, the home of Alcatraz and the Golden Gate Bridge. We're going to visit our good friends at the San Francisco Ghost Hunt. But before we get to that, with this summer here, I believe this is the first weekend we have all of our different Haunted Walk experiences running. So in addition to the regular city tours in Kingston, Ottawa, and Toronto, we also have Haunted Walk experiences at the Mackenzie King Estate, Upper Canada Village, Fort Henry National Historic Site, and Black Creek Pioneer Village. All of those special tours are now taking place. And really, that is just the tip of the iceberg. So I hope as you're making your summer plans, if you live in or visiting one of our cities, I hope you will check out one of our tours. Information about all of our tours and paranormal adventures can be found on our website, which is hauntedwalk.com. We'd also love to connect with you on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all three at Haunted Walk. And as always, if you're enjoying the show, I hope you will consider leaving us a 5-star review. It's a great way to give us a little bit of feedback about the work we're doing, and of course, it helps other folks with similar interests find out about us as well. All right, everyone, it looks like we are pulling up to the departure point of our tour. If you can gather your belongings off the bus. I know it was a long plane ride, but we are here, and maybe no one should mention the Toronto Raptors' recent NBA championship, just to play it safe. But I do see a fellow in a very noticeable top hat just standing over there. He has to be our guide. Let's go see what the San Francisco Ghost Hunt is all about.
My name is Christian Cagigal, and I'm the owner-operator of the San Francisco Ghost Hunt walking tour.
Now, one question that always interests me is a bit of the backstory of storytellers. So how did you become a professional ghost storyteller?
Years ago, in a time far away called the 90s, I was in college. I've always been involved in magic and theater, and since I was a teenager. And a friend of mine, an older friend who I befriended through the magic community in San Francisco, his name was Jim Fassbinder. He really liked the fact that I involved storytelling and magic. And he had been going on ghost tours around the country when he was going on vacation. And he was thinking, San Francisco didn't have one yet. And he came up with the San Francisco Ghost Hunt. He had me come on board early on to essentially sort of coach him as a kind of co-director, I guess you can say, or consultant. And I would take the tour a lot, and I would give him notes and thoughts, and he involved little bits of magic throughout the tour, and I would kind of consult on the performance of them. And they were very much magic tricks. You knew they were magic tricks. And then I was still in college. I was getting my theater degree, so I worked for him on off nights, and that was a few dollars that I could make while I was in college. That didn't conflict with my theater making time. And I did that for a couple of years. I did research for him on some of the stories. And after that, I went about my life in my magic and theater career. And he went about his life. He ran the tour for the next 17 years, sometimes 7 nights a week, usually year round, and it went really successful. There were other kind of ghost tours that kind of came up afterwards in the area, but as far as I've ever known, the ghost hunt has always been the first one in San Francisco. And then, goodness, I think like 5 years ago, he started making sounds that he was going to retire. He says, he's going to be approaching 70 soon, and he wants to retire. And I was approaching my 40s and living an artist's life on a artist budget in theater, and doing fringe festivals around the country, doing my magic and storytelling, and doing lots of kind of spooky magic, what's called within magic bizarre magic, where you kind of do more sort of haunted themed magic. So I figured, well, Jim, let's talk about me purchasing the tour from you. And yeah, so I've now been running it. This is the middle of my 4th year running it. Jim is very happily now retiring to Kauai next month, and that was always a dream of his. But he really ran it pretty dang successfully, to the point where we actually got to quit his day job and just run a ghost tour, and that's how I found myself in this position. And so storytelling has always been a part of my life. Performance has always been a part of my life. And I would even say, in large part, because of my experience working for Jim way back, that probably influenced the artistic direction my magic performances would go. So it kind of all seemed destined that I would eventually own this tour and be running it. And I've been very grateful. It's treated me well, and I've had to learn how to be. It's one thing to learn show business. It's another thing to learn the tourist business. But thankfully, Jim did all the hard work, and I just have to make sure it keeps working.
And was the paranormal something you had an interest in growing up, or in your background?
Yeah, I was very much, even before I was into magic and mystery and performance, I very much loved watching unsolved mysteries just for the ghost stories.
Yes.
I didn't care about the murders. Murders didn't really get me so much, but I always loved the idea of like, oh, I wonder if there's something else. Discovery Channel would have reruns of Arthur C. Clarke's World of Strange Powers, and that kind of a thing, and I would watch that stuff, and I wanted to see about the girl who could cry tears of gold and that kind of a thing. So I was always into that when I was a kid. And I think that also fed into kind of my love of magic performance. Is always the idea of mystery, where lots of magicians can be very cynical about their magic and be very much like, there's no such thing as magic in their execution of magic. I prefer to go more in the direction of finding some sort of mystery in the performance. As time progressed, I fell away from the interest in the paranormal. I like to say, when people ask me on the tour, like, Christian, do you believe in ghosts? I say, I'll tell you the truth. I'm the skeptic who wants to believe in ghosts. But I was never really into scary stories, horror films. I still don't watch them, but I love, and I'll be honest, I don't believe in hauntings, but I love haunted places. I love the stories. I want to go to them. I want to feel the energy. And even as a complete atheist, I will sit in, say, the haunted room that we sometimes get to visit on my tour, or among the trees that are supposed to be haunted on my tour, like late at night when everybody's gone, and just sort of like commune with the spirits, so to speak. Even though I don't believe, I still, like, part of me just like wants to just be there and feel the energy. So I don't know. You could call me a tooth fairy agnostic about ghosts and the paranormal. I lie in a weird in-between world of belief and not belief when it comes down to it, and my interest with it.
That's very interesting. And I think that ties quite nicely into my next question, which is, every ghost tour has their own way of conducting tours or experiences, kind of their philosophy, if you will. What is the San Francisco Ghost Hunts kind of take on giving ghost tours? What philosophy do you kind of believe in as a company?
I will say, for me, the way I present it on purpose, because I know I need to entertain everyone. You are on vacation. There's usually one person in the group who's into ghosts, and everyone else is dragged on a ghost tour, right? There's always the boyfriend or the girlfriend who's like, ghosts, while they're just being, patient with the believer. And I want to make sure that everyone is on board and going to have a good time, and can even enjoy the spooky, mysterious parts about it. So the outward philosophy is that this is a historic walking tour about the area, about the neighborhood that we're in, and you will hear how these people lived, died, and the reports of their hauntings after that. I don't make it up. I just report it. You decide what to do with that information. My inner philosophy is I kind of want everyone to kind of question what they believe. I just don't tell the skeptics that on the tour. Again, I love the mystery. I love creating a little bit of doubt. I love creating that question of, is there something else after this? There is no actual proof either way. My first philosophy is people just want to have a good time that night. They're on a date. They're with family. Phase two is someone doesn't really want to be there. Lots of people don't really want to be there, so make sure everyone else has a good time with humor, with the performance, with the storytelling, with facts, with trying to put as much history as possible into every story, so everyone feels like they come away also a little smarter from the evening. And then, even if you don't believe in ghosts, I want you to come away going, at least a couple times during the tour, and just get that shiver inside of you. And then I feel like I've delivered, because believers are going to believe no matter what I say on the tour. Non-believers are going to refuse to believe no matter what I say on the tour. And so I just got to make sure everyone has a good time and gets what they want out of it.
Now, keeping in mind that many of our listeners, we have listeners around the world, like myself, have not had the opportunity to visit San Francisco yet. Could you tell us what makes San Francisco a great haunted city?
Well, it's a very colorful city. We've always had a certain spirit of when you want to run away from where you're from, you come to San Francisco. When you want to start anew, you come to San Francisco. When you want to create a new form of art or technology or whatever, you come to San Francisco. Crazy ideas can be experimented and tried in San Francisco. And that has created a very colorful past, from Shanghai Kelly, Shanghaiing people to Shanghai, to on my tour, we have Mary Ellen Pleasant, who's kind of become more and more of a hero of mine as I've done more research on my own. If you took Harriet Tubman and Marie Laveau and rolled them into one human being, which I don't know if all of your listeners around the world will understand the references. This is Mary Ellen Pleasant. She was a Black woman born into slavery. Her life story is not entirely known because she sort of covered it up a little bit. But somehow she eventually became worth $30 million in San Francisco, had multiple properties, ran boarding houses, apparently did study under Marie Laveau, although not every biographer agrees on that. And Marie Laveau was famous for being the voodoo queen of New Orleans, who apparently held New Orleans in the palm of her hand with blackmail and voodoo. Again, for your listeners around the world, Harriet Tubman was a woman born into slavery, a Black woman born into slavery who was a spy for the Union Army, and also helped to smuggle people to freedom on the Underground Railroad all the way up to Canada and into the northern states. So while Mary Ellen Pleasant didn't do all that, she did use her fortune to help free enslaved people, to fund slave revolts that did or did not go well. And she has a checkered past where you can't quite tell if she did or did not kill people. She seemed to suggest that she might have, and then she suggests that she didn't. She rewrote her own life multiple times because she said, I don't care what you think about me as long as someone gets free and someone else gets a blanket. And so, slavery is a terribly complicated situation and not good. And sometimes drastic measures were taken back then, right? But I mean, a woman like her who was infamous in her time is forgotten in San Francisco history now. And I sort of feel like it's my job to get to tell her story and make sure more people know about her. So colorful people like this exist in San Francisco. We have other colorful characters that aren't on my tour. They're not in the neighborhood that we're in, but yeah, it has a very colorful, checkered past for being so young. Lots of crazy things happened out here, and also the place is just beautiful. The San Francisco is kind of stupid beautiful. Like, even though we're covered in technology and iPads and people on their iPhones all day long, when you can forget the new people who've moved into our town, and just like look around you, it's like there's hills everywhere. There's fog. There's pelicans and seagulls. There's owls. There's ravens. There's all sorts of things. And because actually we do tend to get colder in the summer. Like we call the month of August Fogust. It's, summertime is the most perfect time to take my walking tour because it is like you're walking through like what we think of as London fog from the movies, which is really just pollution back from the 1800s. But But the image we have of foggy London is really San Francisco. And so there are nights in the middle of August where we are walking by a dark wooded park and there's just fog rolling down the street, and I'm all like, "Thanks, spirits. Thanks, ghosts. You're doing a good job for me tonight."
Well, that sounds like a perfect segue for us. If our listeners imagine us standing in that foggy area, I wonder if you could share with us, as we're standing there, one of your favorite ghost stories from your tour to give us a sense of what it might be like.
There's this one mansion on the corner of California Street and Octavia. Big yellow mansion. You could Google it right now, Atherton Mansion, San Francisco. You'll find it. It's actually currently now apartments. It's been apartments for decades now. But it was built by the family of Faxendine Atherton. And we actually have a small, very rich town in California called Atherton, which gives you an idea of how fancy Atherton was. He married a Chilean woman named Dominga. Dominga was a very strong personality. Together they had multiple children, and one of them was named Jorge, or George. George was not known for being nearly as strong of a personality, but he had designs on a young Gertrude Franklin Horn. She was the grandniece of Benjamin Franklin. And so he proposes to a young Gertrude like 4 or 5 times, turns him down every single time except for the last time, and they finally get married. And this is Victorian era San Francisco, kind of more post-Gold Rush. She regrets marrying him. She's like, "I can't stand the guy. He's a loser." And one day, he has cousins in from Chile who are naval officers, and they're going to go back out to sea the next day. And at dinner, George is getting tanked. He's getting super bold with his statements, saying, "Oh, just you watch. I'm going to go out there with my cousins on their ship. I'm going to be a real sailor man." He sobers up the next morning. He's like, "Oh, no, I can't do that. I was drunk. I'll get sick. I'll die. It's a bad idea. I'm not going to go out there." Gertrude says, "If you know it's good for you, you'd stay here and make a man out of yourself." So he went on the ship. Reverse psychology, exactly Gertrude's plan. 3 months later, he dies. Kidney failure, technically speaking. Really, it was probably too much morphine to kill the pain of the kidney stones that they were not going to be able to do anything about while on a 3-masted sailing ship in the Pacific, right? The thing is, what do you do with dead bodies on ships? Normally, you throw them into the ocean. It's called burial at sea. But this is one of the officer's cousins. They have to send him home. But how do you send him home? You shove George in a barrel of rum to preserve his body. They transferred him to another ship coming back to San Francisco in Tahiti. And the thing is, these 3 months, Gertrude does not know any of this. Right? So for 3 months, Gertrude is partying down. Finally, the husband is gone. She can be, the wild spirit that she really is, because she was always a very strong wild spirit, especially in the Victorian era. That, it's really saying something. Okay, now, I always like to try and make sure that my audience knows when I might be speaking legend. Legend has it that one night a barrel of rum is delivered for one of these parties. And I make the joke of, I think it went like this. We should check the barrel. They go back into the kitchen, pop the thing open. A rush of wind goes throughout the entire house. Windows and doors are heard to slam shut throughout the entire house, as inside they discover the pickled body of George Atherton. Gertrude said George would haunt me if he could. And many was the night she said she could hear George's weak little knock on her bedroom door, like saying, "Honey, I'm home. Can I come in?" No. Dead or alive, the answer was no. A couple more years pass. She is now a single mom. She has done her debt to society. She was a woman who got married to a man and had children. She is now a widow. She doesn't have to marry a man ever again. And she doesn't, as far as I've ever known. She goes off into the world, and she becomes one of San Francisco's most preeminent feminist novelists and historians. She writes histories, romances, historical romances, short stories, horror stories. She writes for the San Francisco Examiner newspaper. She's having a weird May-December not romance with the writer Ambrose Bierce. She wrote a successful fictionalized biography of Alexander Hamilton. She usually wrote strong female characters as the leads to all of her stories, but unfortunately, what do we do to women who do that back then? We try and forget about them. But you can go to Amazon tonight, type in Gertrude Atherton. You will find her short stories, her novels, her biographies. Her Wikipedia page is actually pretty good. It's not written by her, but it's pretty good. We actually have a plaque placed in her honor in the park just up the hill from her home. In 1923, that whole mansion got sold to Carrie Rousseau, an eccentric woman who cut it up into a bunch of apartments. The last one she kept for herself and her 50 cats. And throughout the years, tenants always had stories. Some folks could feel a rush of wind pass through their apartment. When everything was locked up, nothing to pass a rush of wind through. Others could hear knocks in the walls right next to their beds when there was nothing to make a knocking in the wall with. I have been told from people who live in there, the place has a strong female presence. Men don't last in there as long as women. It's not haunted at all, and I've lived here for 30 years, it's hella haunted. It's a thing we say in San Francisco, hella. In the 90s, it got sold again, and when they ripped up the floors of Carrie's apartment, you know what they found? Fossilized cat poo. She did not use litter boxes nor litter.
Oh my.
When they were done fixing the place, a young couple had moved upstairs on the side of the house that we visit, and they would actually poke their head out during the tour back in the 90s and say, "It's still haunted!" Woo! And they would actually tell us more stories from the window. And, you know, stuff you've heard before. Something opens, something closes, a knife that moves in the kitchen one night, stuff like that. But my favorite story, a very only in San Francisco kind of ghost story. That couple were having a fight, and they're about to go to bed angry, and their car goes off. Ba, 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 ba. It's not the alarm. That will not make it stop. It is late. It is cold. The husband has to come downstairs all by himself. Pop open the hood, rip up wires. Nothing was making the horn stop. He finally sits down behind the wheel and says in complete defeat, "All right, Gertrude, I'll go upstairs and I'll apologize." And it stopped. A very strong ghost Gertrude is, who takes sides. They actually had psychic Sylvia Brown, years before she passed away, go through the house. And she says she felt the presence of 4 spirits, 3 women believed to be Carrie, Dominga, and Gertrude, and a pale, male, frail ghost believed to be George. She says she felt him as a cold spot under the stairs, a space just big enough to push in a barrel of rum. And that's that story.
Nice. That's a great story.
Thanks.
That says a lot of good twists and turns to it.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that gives us, I think, a real sense of kind of, it sounds like having fun is really important to you on tour, and humor plays a big role for you.
When it comes down to live performance in particular, horror and comedy go hand in hand. I'm on a walking tour out on a busy, noisy street. It's different if I were actually in one location the entire night where I could really control the environment. But when you can't control the environment, we know I'm just a dude in a top hat on the street. So I can't get too over serious. I can't even take myself too seriously. And as long as the audience knows that, then they can appreciate everything I'm doing. Also, horror and comedy, if you go back to the beginnings of horror in performance, you go back to the theater of Grand Guignol in France, where they were doing the original like slasher movies on stage basically in the 1800s, but they would do vignettes. It would be like a short comedy vignette, and maybe even a sexy vignette, and then it would be like a scary one, and then a comedy one, and a sexy one, and a scarier one, and a funnier one, and an even naughtier one, and then it'll be like a super gory vignette. And by the end of it, the lights are going out, you're being tickled by actors in the dark, things are flying at you, people are having their eyes poked out, all theatrical convention back then. It would almost be like this hot and cold thing. Their formula was basically hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold, which would really mess with your emotions. The humor would would get you loosened up. The sexiness would kind of titillate you, and then that kind of like amps up your emotions to go like into the horror. I obviously don't do sexy on my tour. I got it. I mean, it's pretty sexy. But so laughter and horror have always gone well hand in hand in live performance. I think it's a good formula, but it is a delicate balance to figure out both. I try and give both the energy they deserve. I don't try and take away from the horror. And also, I mean, you're hearing me chew up scenery a little more, as we say in theater. When I was telling the story, I will kind of go between deadpan to haunted mansion, so to speak, in my performance execution. Like if it's a super noisy street, I have to go more cartoony haunted mansion. It's just I need to I'm basically street performing, and I need to make sure I capture your attention at all times because there's cars going by, a Google charter bus, a dog being walked by. But on times where the street gets just dead quiet and there's nobody around, and I have like 30 people with me, I will very happily almost go deadpan. Just go as genuine in the execution as possible, especially when I get to the reports, when I get to the stories of the hauntings, which is wonderful. Just everyone just does not move because now you really have this feeling of, oh, he's serious. He's not messing around right now. He really means what he's saying to us, and it just resonates in a different way in their bodies. And then even the husband that was dragged on a ghost tour that doesn't believe in ghosts, he is in. He is like hook, line, sinker. He was with me, and we are going to have a good time tonight. So I will change up my performance depending on the situation that I'm in. Sometimes we get to go into a room in a haunted hotel nearby, and it's great because now I'm in full control of the environment. I'm in a quiet room. I can turn down the lights, and I can get subtler in my performance, which just unnerves people. People want to be spooked out at least a little bit on a ghost tour, and at least I can give them that. I've been on other ghost tours where you're underground, you're in a room, you're in more control of the environment, and they can go even spookier and darker, and have no humor. I prefer to play with both throughout the evening, and again that just means everybody has a good time. People know that I'm not taking myself too seriously. It makes me human, and it makes me easier to connect to. And then if you're connecting to my emotions more and who I am as a person more, you'll pay attention more when I start telling you about the hauntings. And if you don't believe in ghosts, it won't matter anymore. You're in it. You're willing to go with me on the journey.
Christian, thanks so much for joining us today. If our listeners are interested in finding out more about the San Francisco Ghost Hunt and yourself, where's the best place for them to go?
Please go to sfghosthunt.com. SF as in San Francisco, ghosthunt.com.
Great chatting with you, Christian. Hope I can get out to San Francisco to visit you soon.
Great, thank you.
I really enjoyed having the opportunity to speak with Craig and hear him tell that story. As you'll hear as you listen to more episodes, every ghost storyteller has their own unique style, and I really appreciated the humor that Craig brought to the story. If you're going to be visiting San Francisco this summer, be sure to check out Craig's tour and let us know what the experience is like. We'd love to hear what it's like to do the tour in person. Information about our experiences in Kingston, Ottawa, and Toronto, as well as those special haunted walk experiences, all of that information can be found on our website, hauntedwalk.com, or by following us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, all three at Haunted Walk. As always, a special thank you to our Haunted Talks team, including Michelle Dennis, our audio editor, and to Ezra, our new Haunted Talks intern, who has recently started and is helping us out, and of course, to Kevin McLeod at Incompetech.com for the additional music. Be sure to rate, subscribe, and review the show wherever you listen to us. Until we meet again, sweet dreams.